Buckle up, Buttercup, because the Linux Foundation now officially spends 2%, count them 2% of their revenue on Linux. This isn't a joke. Oh my word, I just published the first article in this series over on lunduke.locals.com. I'm going to read some of it to you now because it's nuts. This is ridiculous. Seriously, they're spending at the Linux Foundation 6 times what they spend on Linux. They're spending it on artificial intelligence. No joke. 6 times. It's crazy. Okay, I'm going to read a few things to you now because this is totally real. The Linux Foundation has released their 2023 annual report. They drop it in the middle of the holidays in December. I think they're trying to bury it here. And it is an absolute doozy. Holy heavens. The first big headline, and there's a few of them. As of 2023, this year, the Linux Foundation now spends just 2% of their revenue on their namesake, the Linux kernel. Here's a graph. Check out this graph. See that little tiny itty-bitty slice up there? That's Linux. 2%. The big red slice that is everything else is anything but Linux. It sort of looks like if Pac-Man were red and barely had his lips parted. Oh my heavens. Now ask yourself this. If there is a foundation, let's be real about this. If there's a foundation named after a thing, a specific thing, what percentage of that foundation's revenue would you expect to be spent on said thing? Now let's say, hypothetical, there is a Save the Orange Trees Foundation, right? Okay, so how much of the revenue of the Save the Orange Trees Foundation should be spent on, I don't know, orange trees, right? Should it be 100% of the revenue? 50%? 10%? What should it be? And if, hypothetically speaking, the Save the Orange Trees Foundation only spent 2% on actually saving orange trees, would you think that something was amiss? Something was a little hanky there? Of course you would. It's ridiculous. And you would quickly wonder what non-orange tree thing that the foundation was funding, right? I mean, maybe they could say, okay, well, we're doing some things that are kind of sort of tangentially orange tree related. It's like, well, okay, that's a bit of a stretch, but I'll let you have that one. But then it turns out they're getting into walnuts. It's like, no, wait a minute, what are you doing getting into walnuts? So, with all that in mind, let's look at the Linux Foundation funding of Linux compared to their investments in blockchains and artificial intelligence. This is real. For those of you listening to the audio podcast, go watch the video or go read the article so you can see the graphs. Linux is there at 2%. The chart's a little off. It's actually showing Linux higher than what it actually is, but whatever. Linux is at 2%. Blockchain is at 4%, right? So it's twice Linux. The Linux Foundation is spending 2 times what they spent on the Linux kernel on blockchain stuff. But then it's the AI. It's the artificial intelligence section that accounts for 12% of their spending. So what the Linux Foundation takes in, they turn around and spend 12% of it on artificial intelligence stuff. Holy heavens. That is insane. So what that means is 6 times as much money goes to AI as Linux. Holy heavens. Holy heavens. Now, lest you think that this is merely a blip, and that surely Linux support will go up the next year, recent history would strongly suggest otherwise. This is a significant drop from the 2022 numbers, and take a look at this chart. Here is the chart that shows it's gone down 2021 to 2022 and now to 2023. It's taken a nosedive. It's right? If this was a water slide, it maybe isn't a, sudden drop or anything, but you can get going at a pretty good clip on this water slide. Just to be clear, and I put this in the article, I'm sensing a pattern. Now, wait a minute, you exclaim. I hear so many people shouting at their screens right now. just because the revenue percentage spent on Linux is down, that doesn't necessarily mean that the total numbers are down. The Linux Foundation is, after all, growing. Maybe the total amount spent actually went up while the percentage went down. Okay, all right, so that's a theory. So let's test that theory, right? Let's say that the Linux Foundation grew so much that even though they increased their total spending of Linux kernel development and support, the percentage went down. They just couldn't keep up with the spending. Oh, okay, let's test that. Turns out we can do math and figure that out. So the Linux Foundation has been growing by leaps and bounds. They now bring in $250 million per year. That's not a joke or a typo. $250 million. They bring in $260-something million every year. $250 capital B billion. Now, the amount of actually spent on the Linux kernel dropped roughly $400,000 in 2023. Now you'd think a foundation that brings in $250 million could spare an extra $400K to at least keep the number the same. But no, it went down. Now, I pointed out very, very recently that it appeared that the Linux Foundation was going to be lowering their support for Linux. I talked about this. They were talking about decreasing their support for long-term support Linux kernel releases and the like. And I made the point that, with them decreasing year on year the amount of money they're putting in to the Linux kernel and then coming out with a statement that they're going to drop long-term support Linux kernel releases, it kind of looks like they're dropping Linux support in a pretty significant way. Now, it doesn't mean they're abandoning Linux support. They give to Linux support. They fund Linus, right? So obviously they still are. But for a foundation whose actual name is Linux, the fact that they're dropping support significantly in terms of actual hard numbers and as a percentage of their revenue, while at the same time growing their amount that they're spending on non-Linux things or things that are only just barely Linuxy, right? Like they're going to do AI research, and technically some of those AI systems could run on top of Linux, so therefore it's Linux. Or they're going to do blockchain work. Well, technically some of that could run on Linux, so it's Linux, right? Those sorts of things. Yes, kinda, sort of. I mean, that's a pretty big if. That's a stretch. It's a big stretch, but it's happening. It is happening, and it is absolutely mammoth. 2%. And I want to be very clear about something here. This is just the first big headline to come out of the Linux Foundation 2023 report. It's hundreds. It's 100 and I don't know how many pages long. It's long. So I'm going through that, and I'm going through all the tax reports right now, and there's more in there than I was expecting in terms of where the money comes from, where the money is being spent, what sort of initiatives are given an emphasis, what the future holds. Like, all the stuff coming out of the Linux Foundation 2023 report is a little earth-shattering from the Linux point of view. And so I'm going to be covering that a fair bit over the days ahead. Most of that coverage will exist over at lunduke.locals.com. That's where I put all of my very tech-focused coverage. We stay away from politics over at lunduke.locals.com, but there are a few political things in their 2023 report. Those will be covered over at conservativenerds.locals.com. I keep the two separate because if you don't want to hear about all the political stuff, and there is some strange political stuff, again, including where some of this money is coming from, if you don't want to hear about that, don't go to conservativenerds.locals.com. Don't go there. Stay far away from there, man. It's going to get very political very fast. All very factual, I should point out. I've been currently doing a huge flood of leaks that have been coming out of IBM and Red Hat, getting those published over at conservativenerds.locals.com. I have more coming from more big tech companies and foundations over the days and weeks ahead that just keep pouring in from all of you. It has been amazing and eye-opening, but all of it tends to be very political, so that's all staying over there. If you want to avoid that, stay over at lunduke.locals.com. No politics. You'll just hear about the weird shenanigans and the fact that the Linux Foundation only spends 2% of their revenue on Linux. You'll find out about all that over there. We got a lot coming in. So head on over to lunduke.com for more details and all the links on everything related to the Lunduke Journal, all of our aspects, the tech stuff and the stuff that veers a little more political. It's all over there. There's lots of links there. I should also point out that the year is almost coming to a close. It is December. It is the evening of December 26th, heading into December 27th as I record this. And the price of a Lunduke Journal subscription is going up in just a few days. So on January 1st, the price of a standard monthly, yearly, and the lifetime subscriptions that we offer to the Lunduke Journal are going up to match inflation. We haven't done a price raise in a while, and inflation's been hitting us. And so we're doing a price raise that exactly matches inflation, which means it's not a huge rise, but if you grab your subscription now before January 1st, you're locked in at the current rate. So your subscription price is lower. Even if you just grab the monthly price, right? You're locked in now, and you don't get the higher price that'll be there on January 1st. So go do that now. Go to lunduke.com and grab that so you don't spend more, because I mean, or you can wait. You can wait till January 1st and then give me more money. That's fine too. I'd feel bad about that. So go do it now so you save money, and we'll all feel better about all this in general. All right, that's it for now. Stay tuned. Because there is so much more coming. I think I even put that in the article. Yes, stay tuned. There is a lot more coming out of this. There's more coming out of some other foundations as well, which you will find out about tomorrow. All right, everybody. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the intertubes, I do declare, end broadcast.